Hey, good morning, Thinker. Saw your Instagram post of your studio. Thanks. Hey, you're welcome. I figured it'd be helpful. I also took a picture of my entire studio, but I'll try and make it part of the post for tomorrow's live stream on my website. I haven't put that up yet, though. I'm usually a few days behind on updating my website for the latest art that I do. I changed around some things. I'm always trying to improve. So let me know at any point in time if I'm too loud or if the music's too soft or if the audio looks a bit weird. So first thing I want to do is lift up my canvas. Because we are done with the head right now. We're moving down the body. And actually, I could probably move the camera back. Sorry, I really should have had all this done before the stream this morning. Let's see. Actually, that should work. Instead of moving the camera back, I just removed the cropping on it. Okay, running just a little bit behind this morning. Yeah, hopefully I only had a minute to just to show off the studio on Instagram yesterday. I think I could have created a longer one. I'm not sure. I'm not super familiar with Instagram Reels yet. I've just done a few of them. Another thing that'd be fun to learn. But if you need more information, just let me know. Another thing I'll say is I used for years just really cheap shop lights. Like the $3 and $5 silver shop lights that you can get at the hardware store. I used those for a long time. Depending on where you place them and depending on the size of your campus, they don't work too bad. Yeah, I don't have half of the stuff ready this morning. I'm getting my brushes out. I don't have my paper towels out here and prepared. I've been made fun of. Sorry for the noise. I've been made fun of several times with how I prepare my setup, the paint, because I like the order. So for example, right now I'm folding my paper towels in a certain way. That way I can stack them up. 4 or 5 of them. And as soon as I pick them up, they're ready for me. There's an interesting statistic that I a couple years ago or something. I was relearning to walk. Not that I couldn't walk. It's just I had knee and ankle issues. Like foot issues, basically. And there's this assumption that, you know, you just go and you walk. And I knew that walking could be more than that, that there's a right way to walk and a wrong way to walk, and there's a history beyond it. The history of walking is affected by the shoe market, which is really interesting. So I was doing, you know, reading a lot of books about walking. Fix Your Feet by Phil Maffetone is really good if you have foot issues. It's kind of like a holistic approach to walking. And I'm going to oil out more of this tiger before I get started. Right under all the oil we put down yesterday, because I covered up that whole area yesterday. So here I am, I'm learning a better way to walk. And basically, what you do is you go barefoot. Or you get, I bought some Vivo barefoot shoes that, and I still wear them today. They're nothing. They're almost like you don't have shoes on. You know, they're a very minimalist shoe. But anyway, during that research, I came across this statistic that every time you walk a mile, you put about 100,000 pounds of pressure on each foot. 100,000 pounds of pressure on each foot. And a lot of people are like, wow, I'm going to stop walking. No. You know, it's built up over time, right? So, you know, think about that in terms of what you do every day. So let's say that while you're doing your painting setup, that throughout your painting time, every single time, you have to put out paints consistently. You have to find your brushes consistently. You have to set up your paper towels or find those, or find your pencil, or find your eraser, or do all kinds of other things that are keeping you from actually painting. And if you plan on painting, you know, hours and hours and hours for the rest of your life, all of that stuff is going to build up just like all the steps that build up to 100,000 pounds of pressure on each foot. So this is why I like to have everything ready and in its place and organized. I make one decision and all of that's done for me. And now I know where everything is and I can just focus on painting, which I'm going to do right now. So yesterday, as I stood back and looked at this, I need to tilt it forward just a little bit. There we go. As I stood back and looked at my painting, the couple things that I pointed out here. Number one, well, I need to bring back the stripes. That's number one, because I covered them up with a lot of the color that I put over them. The other one was there was this kind of separation between head and body. And even on the digital version, I see that. It's kind of like where these dark colors here just kind of end abruptly. And it's making the head seem like it's separate from the body, like this separate entity. And we don't want that. So, I'm going to probably darken up the shadow here. Bring those two together. Maybe lighten up this darker area here. Bring some more of the body color up into this area. And maybe redo the hair here a little bit so it looks like you can see the body through it. So I need this kind of bluish purple that I have, which is a lighter, cool color. I'm going to be using white and my darkest dark that I mixed up just for that. and see what we got. That's a little bit too light. Let's neutralize it a bit more because it's kind of close to blue, so I'll add a burnt umber. Hey, good morning, Finish. Thanks for joining. Oh, now it's too dark. Boy, so subtle. And you know, that's one thing that I've noticed is when you get into painting shadows, like these darker areas, subtlety just matters so much more. It's so interesting how tiny changes in value read ridiculously. I mean, as I look at these colors that I'm putting on the palette, I could barely tell the difference between them, but as soon as I put them on the canvas, the difference is tremendous. Yeah, I think I need to go darker with this. I'm going to go darker all into the body a bit. And I want to try and keep this loose. I'm going to stop. Well, if anything is going to be still detailed, somewhat detailed, it will be what's close to the head of the tiger. But I'm going to start pulling away from the tremendous detail like I did in the head. A little bit at a time. Really changing the edges between the mane and the body so that there's a bit more blending that goes on there. So much so that even in some places, I'm going to just lose an edge completely. And I like that some of this orange is showing through. I need to get some green from the background to show through back there once I get into the background. Finish. I've noticed this too. Sometimes on the palette, I can't even tell the difference, but once I apply the paint to the canvas, the difference is very noticeable. Yeah, I think in any kind of situation, so I use a vertical palette, and that helps, but it's still, I mean, for me, my palette is to the right of my painting right now. And that cord is really annoying. Get that cord out of the way. So if what would be perfect is if my palette was right here. You know, like a vertical thing. When I work on horizontal canvases, the way I have this easel set up is I can actually have a vertical palette right below it. And you get the same light on the palette as you do on the canvas. Like the closer you can get to it, like maybe over here to the left would be even better. And you can get the same exact light, and that helps out. But over here on the right, I mean, it's a good 1.5 feet away from where I'm working. There's going to be some difference. But even in the dark areas, even if I'm like right next to it, sometimes it's like, holy cow, there's just these subtle differences. I can't even tell. So there's ways to get closer. Now this is going to be fun. I'm mixing up into my darkest dark here for the stripes down at the bottom. Probably don't want to go that dark though. And everything is really cool down here. And I want to make the stripes look darker than that. Now I could keep with like a really bluish kind of cool, darker color, but I'm gonna take it more into a warmer tone. So I've added some burnt umber and alizarin permanent to really kind of offset it a bit. So in those instances, you're using not only the darker value, but you're using the difference in color to really set off certain things. And this might be too much. It might be too harsh. I have to be careful with the edges here because the stripes could stand out just way too much. And I'm looking at how these stripes are drawn as well. Trying to keep them not uniform. Stay away from the analytical human brain as much as I can on this. I'm gonna add some green, a little bit of green. Yeah, that looks, I like the red better than the green, or the warmer color better than the green. You know, one thing I repeat all the time, especially when you're working on foliage and hair and, you know, anything natural that could have repetition happen to it, you always want to, you know, keep it as random as you possibly can. Hey, good morning, Ashton. Which is not super easy. And there goes my camera again. Hold on. My palette camera likes to just turn off. I am upgrading my, and now I have to upgrade my camera. So always when you're working with these organic shapes that have a chance of repetition, make sure that you keep it as random as possible. You don't want this kind of mechanical repetition happening. And if you think about it, you can kind of see it everywhere. I mean, I sort of did it here with these kind of stripes coming down of the hair. You know, each one is exactly the same width apart. It looks kind of like saw teeth. With the palm fronds in the back, you know, I had to work really hard to keep those just random. And, you know, the best way, or the easiest way to do that is just to observe nature. But if you're working out of your head, like if you're working from memory, and you don't have nature to observe, building up that skill is really important for you. So you can kind of randomize things. Always look for that mechanical repetition that happens. And it's really interesting how us humans tend to recognize that more than anything. We tend to kind of gravitate towards the mechanical and the straight lines and the 90-degree angles. It's our big brains. I've been so busy. I'm so happy I don't have classes on Fridays. So you're happy that you're busy? Are you happy that you were busy and now you can relax today? I'm happy when I'm busy, when I'm like, well, when I'm busy on art stuff, when I'm busy on the fun stuff. I think we all can, you know, kind of fill into that. All right, I'm going to take this stripe up behind these hairs a bit. Darken it up right there. In just a couple places. Happy today is my last work day, and then I will rest tomorrow. Plan to finish my relief print in class today. Oh, nice. Hope it's going well. Oh, good morning, or good afternoon, Ulan. Ah, that's going to be fun. This weekend you'll be planning a new design for another intaglio print. You got it. You got to send me an email of your artwork, everybody. If you don't, you know, if it's not, I've probably already seen your Instagram. But I can't remember, honestly. I remember Ulan. Ulan's Instagram is fantastic. She does these pencil drawings, no, colored pencil paintings, I'm calling them because they're that good. Actually, her avatar that she's using right now is one of her paintings of a fox, which I think is fantastic. I love that one. And there's a cat you did that's really pretty. I like that a lot. I am partial to cats. So yeah, share your work, please. Share it here on the live stream so everybody else can see it. Okay, Finish says, what's your opinion on hue pigments? I haven't used genuine cadmium yet, but I noticed my cad yellow hue is very transparent. Despite supposedly being an opaque pigment, are hues just weaker? Yeah, they are actually. They're a little bit closer to a dye. Well, there's two different words there that you used. You used transparent versus opaque and weak versus strong. And I think those denote two different things. For example, what is this? Man, my brain just died on this color. Okay, cerulean blue hue. Down there at the bottom left. It is super strong. Like just a little tiny bit from that. And you know, I know a lot of hues have really low tinting strength. That's what I'm talking about. But I remember reading about this cerulean blue hue from Gamblin, and they intentionally did something with it so that the tinting strength is just off the charts. So that's one aspect to kind of separate out. There's some colors, like a lot of your phthalos will have very high tinting strength, but will be very transparent. Now, and well, it depends on how much medium you're adding to it, but cadmium should be really opaque right out of the tube with no medium. But if you're getting like a cadmium red hue or something like that, it's gonna not have as much pigment, whatever that pigment is, because it's not the, maybe it's something a little bit different. I'm not sure. You don't quote me on that, but maybe it's just, you know, the change in the pigment or something like that. Make sure you're not adding too much medium to it, I guess. Are you adding medium? That would be a good question. But, you know, there's a time to get hues when it makes sense. Like a hue. They call it a, like, here, let me show you too. Hopefully the camera will be able to pick this up. Let's see. Maybe I can focus right on it. There you go. I think that's pretty focused. I know it's dark. And I have a brush in my hand, so it's making that difficult. Okay, so this is a hue. It says cerulean blue hue. And the reason it says cerulean blue hue is because this is a series 2 now, paint, rather than a series like 5 or 6. And the cost difference is tremendous. I mean, you go from like a $3 or $4, no, like a $14 tube of paint to like a $60 tube of paint. So, it depends on your budget, really, in that instance, which one you want to get. If you require that this color that you want to get be opaque, because, think about the way you paint, then the hue will kind of not help you out there. But if you don't have the money to spend on a $60 tube of paint, go with the hue and then just build it up. Here's a really good example I got for you. I'll have to zoom in on this as well. So the red on the right is Naphthol Scarlet, which is semi-transparent, and Cadmium Red Light on the left, which is opaque. And honestly, what I did was I just put a whole bunch of Naphthol Scarlet on there, and it got, it's opaque at that point. You just put a bunch down. So you just pile it on there. Impasto is very helpful. Honestly. That way you can save some money and get an opaque paint. Hopefully that answers your question. But that's really what it's about, just to help you save money. Because these paint manufacturers, they know, they'll put out a tube of paint and it doesn't sell at all. They're like, well, it's, priced beyond what anybody could really afford for that color. So they'll come out with a hue. That's just why they did the cerulean blue hue. Other reasons is because, lapis lazuli, which I think is the actual element that makes cerulean blue, whatever that is. I think it's some kind of rock that it's hard to get, and that's why it's so expensive. And maybe the supply of that rock just goes away. And so they'll create a hue so that they could still provide that color to all their artists, but they don't have to use up those resources as well. That's the same reason why we have a lot of synthetic brushes. I refuse, except for hog hair, I refuse to buy brushes that are mongoose hair. A lot of these manufacturers of brushes, like Rosemary is one of those manufacturers that everybody loves. And, they tout the fact that they use real hair from these animals, but a lot of them are going endangered, critically endangered. So, and synthetic works just as well. So, anyway, I kind of got off topic there. Hopefully that helps. I wasn't using any medium. I guess I'll have to get a genuine cadmium yellow and test the opacity. Yeah, if you can get a small sample of it, or a smaller tube. The small, I would prefer getting the small tubes anyways of opaque paints, because you can go through those a little bit faster before they get too hard in the tube, because they do harden up in the tube over time. Yeah, Ashton, back to you. Yeah, I haven't posted my finished prints yet. I need to. Good, yeah, I want to see your work. Feedback is so important. Probably the most important thing that you get from school is the feedback. And we are ready to help you out, give you all kinds of positive and negative feedback. But be warned, I'm not going to be like, a family member or someone that loves you. tremendously and doesn't want to hurt your feelings. Oh no, I'll tell you what's good about it, but I'll also point out what you can improve upon, because that's where we grow. I mean, if I wanted to feel really great about my art and not have to improve at all, I'd just go to my mom and say, "Hey mom, what do you think about this?" "Oh, it's absolutely beautiful." I mean, that's what she's there for, right? I need to pick me up. I'm gonna go to my mother. But if I want to improve, if I want a real critique, I would go to another artist that has some opinions. You know, Proco is actually really good for that. I used to be on Proco a lot, doing, you know, just reviewing other people's work and answering questions. Now I just do them on video on YouTube because I like this format a lot better. You're welcome, Ulan. And hopefully, when we were talking about your work, that it was helpful too. I love talking about art and everything. So please ask all the questions in the world. Thank you, Finish, for your questions. Everybody can learn from the questions that you have. Okay. Trying to really see in this dark area. I'm getting a mixture of dried paint and not dried paint down there, and it's really making it difficult to see things. I'm actually going to stand back from it. I think standing up and getting away from your work is so important. I mean, I love to sit down when I paint, but I need to stand up to really see where I'm at. And you know, there is one thing that I see that I need to change. I think I did this on the digital version too. I made this stripe just a straight line when it's not supposed to be. This is wrapping around a cylinder of the tiger's head. So or the tiger's body. I need to make it wrap. So I'm going to lighten up this side. So I can broaden out the bottom half of this stripe a bit more. So I get more of a curve. My teachers are pretty harsh, so I'm used to it. You know, and I will say, and I've said this before, going to a university, the best thing about it is the critiques. I mean, a lot of times you won't get into a university and you'll get to with some artists that have a lot of skill in some things, but they're dealing with, you know, the state and all the things that they have to do for the state, and sometimes they're not able to teach like they would want to be able to teach. But those critiques with your peers, oh, it's so important. Getting you used to craving feedback or getting feedback, I think, is every artist needs that to grow. Oh, you have a critique coming up soon, so you're trying to pump the work out. No, that's good. That's another thing that's good about being in a university or a job for art is, you know, you are under a deadline. You know, it's like, oh, even if you don't feel like doing it, you got to get this stuff done. And sometimes, and I know it doesn't feel great in the moment, but that's another way to build up your willpower for, you know, just getting things done, whether you feel like it or not. And I know that kind of goes against the whole idea that, you know, always do what you love. Because even the stuff that you love, there's like art, there's some days when you're not going to feel like doing it. And those are the days where you have to lean on that willpower and just keep moving forward. Hopefully there's a lot less of those days in your life. And if there's more and more than what you think, you know, check in on your direction. Maybe what you think is what you love is not. Got into some extra stuff there. But yeah, getting on those deadlines is really important. That's good. Do you have an email where I can send you my painting and get critiqued? I'd very much appreciate that. Yeah, well, two ways. You can write down my email right now. Or, well, actually, yeah, I really don't care that it's on the live stream, honestly. So two options. You can go to my website, chrisbeaven.com/contact, and there's a contact form there. And that'll send me your email, and then I'll email you back with my personal email. Or you can just email me. If you know my name, you got my email, chris@chrisbeaven.com. So you know how to spell my last name, which is like heaven, but with a B instead of an H. So now you have to know how to spell heaven. Hopefully you do. and you know, I say it that way because it's not beaver with an N. That's not how you pronounce it. It's heaven with an H. I get a lot of Beavens, like Mr. Beaven. Or Blevins for some reason. There's a lot of people that add an L in there. It's kind of weird. Like, there's no L in my name. Fun stuff. Yeah, either way you want to contact me, that would be fantastic. Working with these subtle colors again, and then I just added a whole bunch of white to this area, to this color, and it's way off from where I want it to be. So I'm going to dip back into my ultramarine blue, a big chunk of that, big chunk of burnt umber and alizarin permanent to remake up my darkest dark, but now I need to add a bunch of medium to it. See if I can get back to the values that I actually want. So what I'm excited about, well, if you guys have any other questions, please ask. But I'm slowly realizing that I need to work on trying to pick out the right words. Whenever I see something where, oh wow, I need, you know, it's a definite that I need to work on this, I get pretty excited about it, because whenever you get those kind of insights into your art, into whatever you do, from, you know, years of experience, I know that what's going to be coming after that is a huge improvement. As long as I recognize what I need to work on and I don't ignore it and I attack it and I just go after it and say, okay, this is what we're going to work on. And it's really easy if you know, you're well, I'll show you an example is I need to work on subtlety within color temperature and color relativity. What do I mean by that? And part of it is using color gamuts. I'm getting deep into like very subtle things with color here. And it's basically where you pick a hue on the color wheel, a basic area, and you stay within that area and you don't move throughout it. So you severely limit your palette down to just a few colors, and they're all within the same range. Like, let's say, you know, orange. You can go to the center of the color wheel. I forget what they call that. I think they call that a fixed triad. No, a fixed... I forget what the gamut is called. Yeah, a gamut is if you look at a circular color wheel and then you just draw like a section on it, a small section, and then you just work within the colors that that section holds. That's what a gamut is. So for example, if I look at our color wheel here, it's actually really good with this color wheel because this, you know, it's all these pigments that are right out of my tube. So I could say, I'm going to create a painting and I'm going to stay within everything between 5R. So all the way down to the center, 5R to 10YR. So this whole triangle. I'm not going to get any blue. I'm not going to get any purple. I'm not going to get any greens beyond this. So I'll probably, the only thing I would have on my palette would be like a burnt umber, a transparent earth orange, a yellow ochre, maybe the naphthol scarlet, maybe a praline red, this orange, you know, that's all I would have. And I need to work within that, and maybe a white as well. And a black if I wanted to, because those are at the center of the color wheel. And that would be a color gamut, like you identify a space that you work within and then you stay within that. Now, why is that necessary? Why is that important? Why is that a thing? Finish, you say, I've recently taken a look at Light and Color by James Gurney, and what is... Oh yeah, I love that book. Yeah, I'm so glad you pointed that out. 1 second. So here it is. Color and Light, a guide for the realistic painter, James Gurney. I also have his other book, Imaginative Realism. And oh, these paintings are beautiful. The purpose of a color gamut is to achieve real harmony within your colors in a painting. I'm flipping through the book right now. Maybe I'll do it on stream so you can kind of see some of it. It's kind of bright. Let's darken it up. Oops, wrong way. So the purpose of a color gamut, sorry for the glare on the book, is to achieve kind of like, and actually you can see it in this work right here, mostly all blues and then an orange. So there's a harmony within all the blues. And then he brought in his focal point with this kind of orange, right? There's a bit of harmony in the background of our painting, our tiger painting, because it's a harmony in greens. You know, I stayed within all kinds of greens. But there's a subtlety that you can reach there. And I think I know what I'm going to do. Like one of the next paintings I'm going to do is going to be a portrait. And I'm going to do several things with it. I'm trying to find color gamuts in the book. Ah, here's a picture of one. Nope. Nope, nope. I'm trying to show you stuff more than I am trying to paint. Here we go. These are color gamuts. As you can see, like on the color wheel, you know, he has these kind of sections that he's marked off on these color wheels to just stay within that area. And you achieve a harmony within your painting that way. Everything has this kind of similar tone to it. There's many painters out there that in the past that have worked that way and it just made some absolutely beautiful paintings. I tend to work and get a bit garish with a lot of my colors, kind of go too extreme with it. And I really need to train that subtlety. And so that's what I'm going to try and work on. And I already have a portrait set up that I want to paint. And I'm going to do several things with it. The first thing I'm going to do is it's going to be a very limited palette. Like extremely limited. I think 4 colors max. And black is going to be on there as well. It's going to be like the Zorn palette, if you guys are familiar with Anders Zorn at all. A lot of people talk about the limitations of limited Zorn palette. He has a lot of harmony within his paintings because of the limited palette. So I'm going to use a very limited palette, but I'm also going to be using very, very cheap paints. I went out a couple weeks ago to prepare for this. And the more I've thought about it, the more I'm really excited about it as well. I went out and I purchased the cheapest paints, the cheapest brushes, cheapest palette, the cheapest everything I could get. You know, and for years, I've been painting with, you know, high-end paints, high-end artist materials. And now I have just a ton of experience within that. I want to go back to student materials, like someone starting out, and see the difference. There's a lot of, I've read several articles, people in books say that Rembrandt, when he was painting, he had materials that were still worse than the worst materials than we have today. So the worst materials that we have today for artists are still better than what Rembrandt had. And I want to test that theory. Also, I think what it will help is this could be helpful for artists that want to get into oil painting but not spend a crap ton of money, because it takes a lot of money to get into oil painting. So all that built into one series of paintings. Portraits, smaller paintings, portraits, trying to achieve color harmony within a limited palette, and cheaper paints. So I can help out, you know, artists that want to jump into oil painting. Talk about multitasking. Don't worry, I had to turn my camera back on. I ordered a new camera. Gotta wait for it to come in. But anyway, I'm excited about that. I'm very excited about it. So what I'm doing here, still talking about myself. I need more questions. Oh, and thanks for pointing out the book, Finish. It's a really good book. I honestly, I haven't read through it all, but it's a great book for what you could call just-in-case information. I have a few books that are like that. I have a few books that I thought would be like that, that just sit on the shelf and I never use. But the book Color and Light by James Gurney is tremendously packed with practical painting information that transcends all materials. Yeah. And subject matters, I would say. It's, you know, all this practical information on fundamental work within just being an artist. So that's a good one. Figure Drawing for Artists by Steve Houston is another one. Oh, there's one other book that I'm trying to think of. I can't remember. But anyway, one day I'll have to just do a review of all my books. That might be coming soon. Maybe take on one book at a time. Wasn't his paint quality so bad that Night Watch wasn't even supposed to be dark? Over time it darkened. Probably. I mean, he was Rembrandt was known for experimentation. I think I learned something about that in art history without the painting, about the painting Night Watch. Yeah. I forget the history of that, but it was something about, you know, him taking forever on it for some reason, and all kinds of experimentation that he was doing. I think he got too deep into his portraits at that point. Portraits with funny hats, you know, that Rembrandt loved to do. But I tell you what, it is the centerpiece at the Rijksmuseum. I've seen it twice in my life in person. I've been lucky enough to have that experience, and it's breathtaking. Not as breathtaking as his self-portraits are, honestly, but Rembrandt was known for really experimenting with paint and trying all kinds of new things. Like he would do crushed up glass. Put crushed up glass in his paint, you know, just to get some different type of transparencies and textures and things. Oil paints will darken over time as well. I don't know the science behind this, but I do know that there's something about if you keep your painting in a dark room for years and years, and I'm talking like maybe a decade or more, it will darken up. But then if you put it in direct sunlight, it will wash out all the color. So light really affects how oil paintings work. I think in some museums, they actually, you know, they rotate certain paintings, you know, in and out of exhibit because, you know, they have to protect the, the fragileness of the paint, depending on how the artist painted it. Some of them use like paints that weren't very light fast, and the yellows start to get seeped out of them and things like that. The worst though is The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. That's the absolute worst. I mean, that painting's gone now. There's barely little bits of it on the wall anymore. I think if you look at a recent photo of The Last Supper, it's just like not there. It's just all fallen off. But you have to remember, I mean, people tend to get, you know, time mixed up with it in this. Like the Night Watch, if you go and see it in person, it's absolutely breathtaking, and it looks like someone just painted it yesterday. Okay. So if it's darkened up in places, I can't tell. And the fact that the Last Supper is falling apart, the darn thing was painted in the 1500s, I think, 1400. I mean, this is back with Michelangelo and all kinds of stuff. I mean, so here's an artist that did the absolute worst thing you could do, is put acrylic on top of oil, basically. I mean, it wasn't called acrylic back then. I think he was using something different, but and it started falling apart like 5 years later or something like that. Like right away, it just started falling apart. But even still to this day, we have really contemporary modern pictures of it, you know, before it fell apart completely. So, I mean, was it 1,000 years it still lasted? Right? And it just really irks me when I get so many artists that, well, you know, that's not archival. Guys, okay. I understand that you want your paintings to last forever. And I do too. But first, you have to be able to make paintings that you're happy with. I don't care about anybody else, but you know, I forget who said it. Maybe it was Richard Schmidt. Worry more about the garbage man, not archival quality. I can't tell you how many bad paintings I've thrown away. Because what are you going to do with them? They're just tests. They're bad paintings for trying to get better. That was their purpose. They've finished their purpose, and now they go into a landfill to return to the earth. You know? So get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm making something good. Now I can worry about the archival quality. A lot of times it's a cart before the horse. You know, I've seen artists that don't paint often at all because they have to do all this stuff to make sure that it's archival. It's ridiculous. Like, no, put the time in the studio first. Make crap paintings that fall apart within, 2 days. But, get that mileage in so you learn. And say, oh, don't do that again. Okay. Stepping off of soapbox. Thanks for that, the Night Watch thing. But no, that is an absolutely fantastic painting. If you're anywhere close to the National Gallery in Washington, D.C., because I know, I think everybody on here is in the United States. That is my most favorite gallery on the planet. Even beyond the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Even the only other museum that rivals it would be the National Gallery in London, that's paired with the National Portrait Gallery in London. They're right next to each other, so you can go back and forth. Like you get a pass for one, buy a ticket for one, and then you can spend all day like going and seeing, the paintings that you only see in history books, like right next to them, by the best painters ever that has ever lived. And then you go into the portrait gallery, and then you see, Sargent paintings and all kinds of amazing portrait paintings like everywhere. It's just ridiculously great. The Louvre, if you really want to get to the like super ancient type paintings, like really old stuff. Actually, if you want to see Caravaggio, oh wow, go to the Louvre. Actually, my favorite in Paris, because I've actually been to Paris once, years and years ago. My favorite in Paris is the Musée d'Orsay. That's the Museum of Orsay in French. That is absolutely fantastic because they have a lot of Monet's, a lot of impressionistic work. You get it into the mid 1800s where things really just start to take off. I think I learned something. Were paintings back then varnished? That's a good question. I mean, I'm pretty sure they had some type of varnish back then. Like they had solvents back then, but they weren't like the solvents that we have today. We have a very industrial strength solvents. Like they had alcohols and stuff. The pigments that they had were, handmade, hand crushed by people with certain drying oils like linseed oil that weren't as refined as ours. There's a lot of artists that would just like pick a plant off the tree or something like that and see if they can make a color out of it. And then, 6 or 8 years later, it would just, that color would disappear. So I'm pretty sure they had some kind of varnish. It was probably like a Damar varnish or something like that. Which I don't know exactly what that's made of. Some kind of sap from a tree, I bet. It's kind of like honey and what is that? And amber. These two things, they last forever. So like Damar varnish is something like that, I think. I'm wondering if they had anything to protect their paintings. I'm sure they did. I don't really know. Well, the one thing I'm pretty sure that they ran into was after the paintings dry, they would get really dull. And you know, an artist right away would go, that's not the right color. And I think that would be the very first reason for, my guess, I don't know the history, that would be my guess beyond, you know, why varnish was invented. Oh, that's right, Ula. I forgot that you're in a different country altogether. Well, if you're close to the National Gallery in London and the National Portrait Gallery, oh, it's absolutely beautiful. Oh, you're all the way, Finnish, you're all the way across the world as well? Yeah, I don't know any, I've never been to Asian galleries. That would be fantastic, though. I would love to see, you know, art galleries in Japan or China or India. There's a whole different, you know, set of principles that are just so different than, you know, Western art that I'm talking about here. I mean, there's so much history that, especially in like Muslim nations, the history behind that is just fantastic. You know, very, very driven by religious practices. This is why the calligraphy, the language, how they write, and I don't know the language, I think it's a Muslim language, but how beautiful their script is. At one point, and I don't know the history perfectly, so don't quote me on this, but basically it was outlawed to be able to create any imagery. You know, you can't recreate imagery of a person or something like that. So they just couldn't do it. So where did the artists turn? They turned to the scriptures, to the script, to the actual words that were written down. And the calligraphy is just breathtaking, you know? And that's why that their written language looks so pretty. And then like the Taj Mahal, these kind of places where the tiles and everything and the written language on it is, you know, amazing. So I love how, you know, kind of history interacts with art and, you know, the creative spirit of individuals. Like, no matter how oppressed they are or how the society changes what they can and cannot paint or draw or do, some kind of creativity will happen. You cannot separate a human from this kind of creative approach. It's fantastic. I'm getting too detailed. I'm sitting here just jabbering on. Yeah. Yeah, Caravaggio's paintings are amazing. I'd love to see them in person. I was able to see... Oh, this is really funny. I got a cool story for you about Caravaggio. So, if you ever go to the Louvre, everybody and their brother, everybody that like is there will pass up all these paintings on their rush to see the Mona Lisa. And they have this huge queue of, you know, stanchions where you have to, you know, kind of zigzag for like a half an hour just to get in front of the Mona Lisa. And it's behind like 6 panes of glass. It's hard to see. It's like way back there in this cove. Like it's so protected. It's ridiculous because it's been stolen a couple times. And it's a very small painting. It is not a big painting at all. It's really interesting. I mean, because, you know, it's got such a big hype to it. It is amazing. I mean, it's a the history of it is awesome, especially after I think they cleaned it recently, and it was, you know, all these colors came out. It was like, whoa, it's even better than it was before. But, you know, that brought it, like, people were like, no, don't clean it. We want to know it how it is right now. And I'm like, no, clean that thing. I want to see what it was like when Leonardo da Vinci actually painted it. It was really bright and colorful. But getting to that queue at the Mona Lisa, all these people pass up the most beautiful Caravaggio paintings ever. I remember right on the corner before you get to, you know, this room where the Mona Lisa is at, the Death of the Virgin by Caravaggio was right there. And I was like, oh, this is so good. And I was like, I didn't even go into the line to see the Mona Lisa. I didn't care. I was like, sorry, I don't think that is even worth my time. I mean, because there was all these just like, Raft of Medusa by, oh man, I'm forgetting his name. That's one of my most favorite paintings from, you know, ancient times. Don't tell anybody, but I actually went up to the painting and touched it with my finger, like right on the edge, barely. It was beautiful. There is this, at the Louvre, there's this one painting. It's called The Coronation of Napoleon. And I think Napoleon had it made, right, for his coronation. It is by far the biggest painting I have ever seen in my life. It has to be like 20 feet tall and probably like 100 feet long. One piece of canvas. I'm pretty sure it's stitched together. And there's something like 200 portraits in it. And then, you know, in all his glory is the overly tall Napoleon on one side. Because, you know, you couldn't paint Napoleon at his current height. He didn't like that. That was breathtaking. That's the Louvre. Yeah, Caravaggio paintings are amazing. I love them in person. Yeah, I think purple represent royalty because it was so hard to come by back then. Oh yeah, I remember hearing something about that. I think certain colors. It was like at some point in history there were these really opulent still lifes where they would build in like all of these animals from different locations that people couldn't get to, like peacocks and certain kind of birds and certain kind of monkeys, and they would be part of this huge still life with you know, food that couldn't be got where the, you know, the person was that was buying it. And, you know, they were selling these paintings to opulent individuals that wanted to say, yeah, you know, I've eaten those foods. I've seen that tamarin monkey. And yeah, it was over in Madagascar, which, you know, because we're world travelers, you know, it's a status symbol, these paintings. It was pretty interesting. The purple came from tiny snails. That's crazy. I am from Kuwait. Oh, wow. Fantastic. That's a place I don't know anything about. There's still stigma about painting and portraiture. Some conservatives still oppose it. There is no real appreciation for artists here in general. Oof. Well, finish. I applaud you for being an artist in such an area. And the great thing is that we have the internet now, and we can expand our influence. We can expand ourselves beyond, you know, the borders on which we live in, the physical borders, which is nice. I mean, I'm talking to a person in Kuwait and people all across the world. It's fantastic. So I just want to let you know that you have a group of people right here that will support your artistic journey. I definitely will. Whatever art you do. I had a friend of mine, well, not a close friend. He shared some art that he did that was very, how to put it? I don't want to say... Yeah, it was very sexual in nature. I'll just keep it like that. Very sexual in nature. And it was like, oh, okay. I can understand where this person's coming from, because, you know, that's a huge driver for a lot of individuals. Mainly male individuals, yes. And they, you know, I've seen so much nudity in my life as far as, you know, life drawings, being, you know, doing nudes myself, you know, looking at reference images of nudes constantly to paint from, that it really doesn't faze me anymore as far as looking at nudes. So I'm able to kind of separate that idea, but at the same time keep it in mind, because there are lines that need to be drawn within that. And I think all of us know kind of where those lines are. I don't need to go into it, not on a stream. But this wasn't so overt. It wasn't getting into, let's say, age restrictions. It wasn't violent. It wasn't beyond more than something that was just fetishy in some way. And so I was able to ignore that and well, recognize it and go, okay, but here's what is good about it, and here's where you can improve. So I say all that just to make the point that whatever art that you share, I'll keep a very open mind about it. I think there are certain lines that can be crossed. Overtly racism is something that I do not condone. Racism in general, honestly. But there's certain works out there that challenge society with the question of race, or the indication of race. Norman Rockwell's painting, you know, was happening during the point when we were desegregating schools, and he did this very poignant painting. I forget the name of it. I need to figure out the name of it. But there is a little girl that was flanked by huge men and official, I think it was like National Guard or something like that, against this very bright wall, because she was being escorted to school, because she had to be, because there were so many people that didn't want her there, and they were throwing things and being violent. And I thought it was a great statement of the time. Norman Rockwell, of all individuals. You would think that, you know, Saturday Morning or whatever that magazine is, what you would think that he wouldn't touch, you know, very difficult topics, because you have to be kind of viable within a market. You have to, you know, follow the PR thing But no, he was like, this is important. I'm going to address this issue with our country. So those kind of paintings, as long as, you know, that type of narrative is trying to be presented, I'm okay with that. But if it's, you know, derogatory to another person's race or a culture, yeah, sorry. The feedback on there would be you need to stop doing that because that's terrible. But the one thing that I don't really blink at anymore is nudity. Violence, on the other hand, could be, you know, that's one thing that I would have to think about. As a nation, the United States is very comfortable with violence more than nudity. And I find it really interesting. I think the UK is much different. Like, they're okay with the nudity, but the violence is a no-no. And I prefer that more than anything. It's like, you know, worship the human body, how beautiful it is, in all of its forms and fashions, regardless of pronoun. But denigrate violence against the human body, definitely. Wow, getting into some hard subjects here, guys. Sorry, I'm really trying to pick my language well. All right, back to this painting. Where are we at? I'm down here. That's where I'm at. It's helpful, Chris. Thanks. Can you even see what I'm doing? Yeah, okay, good. I'm still backed out. Number one is I got too detailed. Number two is that color I just put down is too dark. And I'm going to probably start getting away from the medium that I'm using. It's not as fluid as I want it to be right now. I'm putting on more opaque paint than I would like. So I might drop it or just using refined linseed oil for a bit and try that out. Another thing I can do is really lean heavily on how I oil out the painting and put a little bit more of the refined linseed oil down and then mix my colors within that as they go onto the canvas. That's another possibility. But I want more transparency down here, especially in the dark areas. I had an elective drawing course during my studies, and the art teacher told me my style leans more towards surrealism. I will be sending you an email for feedback. Oh, yeah, I would love to see that. I am not very familiar with surrealist work, except for, you know, the big guys out there. Oh, darn, what's his name? With the melting clocks, the time painting, I forget what that's called as well. My brain is not working for remembering these names. Do you know who I'm talking about, Finish? The guy that did the melting clocks? It's a big name. Gosh, you're going to say it, and I'm going to go, yeah, that's right. Right here. He was a surrealist painter. Surrealism. Yeah, I think, didn't he invent it? No. Magritte invented surrealism, maybe. Why can't I remember his name? Huh. Anyway. As I clean up, see if you can help me out with the name that I'm talking about. Dali, yes. Salvatore Dali. Oh. Here's some funny history about, or some interesting history about Dali. Before he died, I think he signed a lot of blank sheets of paper. And then distributed them. like with his signature on it. So there's like hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't know, of Dali quote-unquote forgeries, but with an accurate signature from Dali, from Salvador Dali. He did that on purpose. He's like, yeah, to heck with you people. Here's a bunch of blank pages with my name on it, my signature. Please forge my work. Kind of funny. It's kind of like, you know, you only have a few years left, so you go out and get a bunch of credit cards and max them out. Only do that if you don't have children. There's got to be something against that. There's something where they protect themselves against that, the credit card companies. I have no idea. But anyway, kind of funny about Dali. All right, guys. Let me step back real quick. I'm going to do that because I've been sitting for way too long and my butt hurts, and I need to make some kind of judgment on the work that I've done so far today and get some feedback on it. Not too bad. I think there's too much texture. Yeah. There's too much texture there. You guys may not be able to see that well in the stream. Or maybe you do. Oh, that's going to be hard to fix. Because softening out... Actually, I should... If I'm going to complain about that, I need to stick with it and do that now. What am I talking about? So, with all these lines and things that I put on here, there's too much texture. And I don't like texture in this area. I want less texture. I love texture, but I don't want... well, let me be specific. I don't want the hard edges. You can grab a lot of texture without hard edges. Like the background of this painting is going to have a lot of texture, but it's going to be a soft texture. Like clouds have a lot of texture to them, but it's a very soft texture. Very different than sandpaper or a roof or something like that. But if I let this dry and I say, oh, these textures are too, or the edges are too hard, trying to soften all that out after it's dry is near impossible. You kind of have to almost paint it over. You'd have to go over the whole thing with a glaze. So I'm going to sit here while it's wet and use my awesome Langnickel brush, which I love this brush. You can use a fan brush too, ones that fan out. And it's just a very light brush where I could go over a lot of these strokes and in whatever direction I want to soften those edges. Just very subtly. Like the brush is actually barely touching this canvas. And I'm focusing on these stripes because that seems to be where most of the texture is. Most of the hard edges. I need to be specific on that. Something to always be wary of is like zebras. You're going to have black against white. You're going to have hard edges there regardless because it's a value change, a huge value change between them. I can't turn it into gray. It wouldn't look like a striped tiger. Like you can't turn, you can't generalize the black and white of a zebra into a gray. It wouldn't look like a zebra. But what you can do is soften out some of those edges. And then why am I softening these edges? Well, I don't want any of this to compete at all with the tiger's head. And if you've watched some of the beginning few episodes of this traditional to digital stream, we talked a lot about all of the elements of composition. And one of those elements of composition is using sharp edges in your focal point to bring attention to it. So if you have, it's part of Unity, which is a bigger kind of principle of composition. But if I had hard edges all over the painting, like I went into super high detail every single place, there would not be one focal point. So I'm going to err on the softer side here, because it's easier to make an edge harder with dry paint than it is to make it softer. So I can always achieve harder edges if I need. Let's step back again. Yeah, that's much better. I can't help but my eyes go directly to the tiger itself. Yeah, or the tiger's head specifically. I'm gonna move my mic and let's see. Can I move this up so you guys can see the contrast between the head, the texture of the head and the body right now? Yeah, I'll probably have to move my camera back next stream. But even at 1080p, I don't think that texture comes through well. And you're getting some glare on the top, so... Alright, before I end the stream, you know one thing I'm going to try is... Bear with me. If you're easily sickened by moving pictures, don't look. Because I'm going to pick up the camera and actually rotate it. And it's going to be handheld for a moment. Oh, and of course it rotates that way on the stream. So I'll have to come back here. Yeah, that's what it's looking like so far. If I can drop the brightness down. So all this texture in the head and then softens out in the body right there. Yeah. Hopefully you see that. Oh, thanks guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, I keep worried about that because I tell you what, it looks... And here's one thing I'll say before I end the stream is it's everything I do, I share online. I take photos of it. It goes on my website and everything. And after the past 10 years, the one thing that I've noticed is if the photograph looks better than the painting, I'm in trouble. And that's happened a lot, believe me. But if the photograph looks worse than the painting, I'm doing really good. And I feel like I'm doing really good with this painting because I can't get good photographs of it. Like what you're seeing on the stream is like a far cry from what I'm seeing in person. So I'm gonna have to like send you guys plane tickets to come out and see the painting in person. Yeah, like like when I get big, I'll do that. Let's hope that happens. Yeah, this guy is going to be paying for me to come out and just see his paintings. Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome? I would love to do that. That'd be like Mr. Beast on YouTube. I'm spending $100,000 to bring all my friends on my live stream to my home to be part of the live stream and look at all of my art. Let's hope one day that I can have that kind of money to do that. That would be amazing. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for showing up. It's already 6 o'clock. I need to get to my workout, my exercise, and I always love the questions. Please send me any more questions in my email. Show your work online. Tag me in it. Whatever. I would love to give you feedback. Thank you so much. I will see you guys tomorrow.